We didn't have squat. I mean, we were, four guys from a steel town,
Yep.
moved out here, lived in a warehouse. We started holding auditions while he was still here. And he liked Slash a lot, by the
Yeah.
way. I got a Fargo story
No
too.
way.
But, it wouldn't have happened with Matt.
Right.
Cece was the missing ingredient, quite
Yep.
honestly. I mean, a lot of those riffs on the first Guns N' Roses record, they're Tracy guns. And by the way, the cover, by the way, we've gotten so much crap for that cover. And then it turned out to be the most divisive, over the top. Fucking people freaked out.
Yeah. That picture is, I think, the most iconic image in the history of that scene.
But then 2 weeks later, our security guy, Chemo, passed away. It wasn't suicide. He didn't try to do it. I think it was death by misadventure. Who should I listen to? Arsenio Hall or Brett or who's in charge here?
Yeah.
Everybody just kind of went their own way. It was very lonely. It was the worst ever. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. It was just I just knew it was a bad night. I knew it spelled some real trouble for us.
Right.
Richie definitely, I've had my issues with Richie over the years, but I mean, he definitely helped me go to another level. Thankfully, there's guys like you and stuff like that who are in the industry now that also happen to be fans. So
Yes.
we're winning with that. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? I want to call it Poison versus the world because it's always been that way.
The hair metal guru from Warren to Crew. The hair metal guru. Never forget Charlie too.
Well, I'll be damned. Look who we got on the channel today. It's Rikki Rockett, and I'll be honest, you do so much shit that trying to come up with a decent intro was practically impossible, but I'm going to give it a try. He's a dad, a motorcycle and truck enthusiast, got a black belt in jiu-jitsu, has 2 YouTube channels. He's an aspiring author, is a cancer survivor, and yes, he's a founding member of the Glam Slam Kings of Noise Poison. Rikki Rockett, welcome to the show.
Wow, what an intro. I don't think I can remember everything you just said.
Right. Hey, thank you so much for coming on. It's an
Oh, my pleasure.
thrill
Yeah.
because I have been a fan of yours and everything that you've done since, forever ago. So anyway, I know that you have a new project called the Rockett Mafia. You have your YouTube channels. I know that you're in the process of writing a book, and I want to get into all that. But if it's okay with you, I'd like to get a little bit of your backstory before we get into that. So I knew you grew up in Mechanicsburg. When did you first become aware that, like, hey, music's different for me? Like, other people like music, but music is going to be something that drives my life. When did you know that?
I think the defining moment was probably I was very bad one day, and I had my sister was older than me. She's 9 years older than me. She had to babysit me. She didn't want to babysit me. She was looking for any excuse to send me to my room, and I came in late and was muddy. Perfect. You're going to your room. And I think she felt bad a little bit. So she gave me her little stereo and a bunch of Beatles records. And I went from wanting to be a race car driver to wanting to be a drummer all in one night.
Okay.
Like I just, so Ringo really inspired me. And it was funny because I was talking to Greg Bissonette yesterday. And of course, he plays in Ringo's band.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it never sinks into him that I need to meet Ringo because that it was so important. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I need to meet that guy. And it's almost happened 3 different times and it just still hasn't happened. So it was kind of a strike three. Maybe it's not supposed to happen. I don't know.
Well, with the way Ringo looks, I mean, that dude's like 80 years old and he still looks like he's in his 40s.
Yeah, I think he's 83.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope I can pull
Unreal.
that off.
My,
Yeah.
my dad is 82 and he lives in a home now because he's got Alzheimer's. And
Um,
to see Ringo and Mick Jagger and some of these guys, and this is kind do you see yourself doing what it is that you do. I mean, how much longer do you feel like you guys can keep going at it since we're talking about the age thing?
I don't know. I think Poison's probably on a 10-year plan, get to the 50th anniversary, you know what I
Sure.
mean? And then everything after that's just, I mean, look, I'm on borrowed time already because of what I went through, but
Right.
yeah, so I mean, God, I remember people asking me this question on like the first and second record. How do you guys imagine yourself? Do you think you could ever have the longevity of the Rolling Stones? And it's like, you know, the Rolling Stones are still doing it. Like,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I mean, but we all have a shelf life of some kind.
Yes.
So,
My
hey, we're
dog is
going for a
outside
walk.
going crazy. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
So, um, so can
I
you,
thought I was going to get to see your collection.
oh, well, I mean, they're like, that's my kiss. Well, it's kind of a kiss wall, but it's,
Wow, look at that. Yeah.
it's a little much. I'm probably going to be single for the rest of my life because anytime a girl comes over, she's like, don't call me, I'll call you, So anyway,
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm married, but I mean, I
yeah,
you can't see it in here. This is my little den of iniquities. I've got so many horror figures in
sure,
this room.
sure.
Just finished this one,
Oh, wow.
uh,
Yeah,
Left for Dead.
right,
And so I built these out. I did a Vampirella.
right. Oh, wow. That's kind of related to like
Uh,
you have that YouTube channel where, legend tripping, I think it's called, but where you
yeah,
kind of explore and
yes.
I want to get into that. Can you like can you tell me about the beginning of you meet Brett, and I think the first band you start was the Spectres. Like, what was that beginning like that ultimately evolved into Paris?
Well, I grew up with a guy, his name was Dave, and he learned to play bass and I learned to play drums all at the same time. And,
Yep.
we went through all our bands together and then but we didn't have a singer. And so Brett was actually working at the same restaurant Dave was working at. It was called like the Amity House. Okay. Not to be confused with Amityville. Um, and so he came over and, we hit it off. He became our singer and we had that band. And then, um, we just couldn't get a good footing,
Yeah,
Uh, Brett and I just had bigger aspirations. We weren't doing it on the weekends. We didn't want to dabble. We wanted to actually do this. And so I had to walk away from like my best friend and move on, get a different bass player, which turned out to be Bobby Dahl. And of course, Matt Smith was in the band back then. But I had been through a slew of smaller little bands here and there,
sure.
basement bands playing, goofy kegger parties and all that crap. I went through all that stuff. But when we really got serious was when Brett and I just took the bull by the horns and said, let's really go for it and let's get a plan and let's figure it out. And somehow we did. We've always said you got to be smart enough to figure it out, but crazy enough to think that you can actually do it. you
Right,
know.
right.
So that sort of was the idea.
So how long were you playing in Pennsylvania and around there before you said, you know what? It's not going to happen here. We need to leave. And I think that was around 83. How long were you doing that before you decided, hey, we got to go?
With the Paris iteration with
Yep.
Brett and everything, about 3.5 years, I'd
Okay.
say. But before that, I played. So
Yeah,
I've been kicking around since I was 15 or whatever.
sure.
I started to play drums when I was 12, but
Okay.
I didn't really play in a band until I was like 15.
Right.
Um, and then, Kim Fowley, who produced The Runaways, got a hold of our demo and said, you really need to be on the West Coast.
Okay.
There's nothing going on the East Coast. I mean, we were playing Maryland. We were young. I mean, we were 20, 21. We were playing Maryland because the drinking age was 18. And in Harrisburg, in Pennsylvania, it was 21. So we had to create our own gigs.
Yeah.
You know, we'd rent VFW halls, we'd rent skating rinks, we'd create these, and then we go play like the clubs. And we lucky enough to open up for Kicks and the Sharks and different local, the Vamps and different bands that were big back then. But we kind of had like this punk rock approach where we make our own flyers, have our own everything. I could just DIY, you know.
Sure.
That was the idea. Just you know, we didn't have anybody working for us. We did everything. And it was hard to let go of that, by the way. But, you know,
Yeah.
when we actually um got out here and started to work with other people. But, you know, Kim Fowley was like, man, you got to come out here. I mean, this is, you know, what's going on in Philly, Boys to Men, what's going on in New York. It was, you know, New Wave. And what was going on in Harrisburg was whatever was left over from those two cities, you know. It really, there was a rock wave happening in Maryland, you know.
Yep.
I mean, you had Hammerjacks and stuff like
Yes.
that, but it was a small, you know, it was just one little circuit you could keep doing over and
Yeah.
over again. Arguably go into Ocean City and Virginia a little bit, and you know, and stuff like that, New York and Jersey a little bit, but everything was happening on the West Coast. Rat was breaking, Motley
Yep.
Crue was breaking, the Quiet Riot had blown the market wide open.
Yes.
You know, Van Halen was leading the way. I mean, so you know, we had to come out. Yeah, I remember we were working on the van that we drove out here, listening to the US Festival, like
Yeah.
on the radio, going,
Yeah.
wow, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we turned an ambulance van into a cargo van for our gear.
I heard about
And
that. Okay.
yeah, and yeah, it was haunted, I'm sure. You know,
Right.
ton of people died in that thing, you know,
Yeah. Right. Right.
the meat wagon, you know.
Right. So,
But
so what was that trip like? And I gotta imagine coming from Pennsylvania and you're not from a huge city, that's gotta be, you gotta be kind of scared, like, holy shit, we're going to LA and, you know, four young punks and we're gonna try to make it big. I mean, what was that like? What was that trip like? And what was it like when you first got to LA and said, here we are, we're gonna try to do this?
we left with 2,500 bucks. By the time we got out here, we had 1,500 bucks between us, talking about hotels and gas and food and everything. So what it was we had two road crew guys that came out with us. Um, Russ Lentz and a guy named Stu Simone. They were in a pickup truck. Brett and I were in the ambulance van, and Bobby was in his little Chevette with Matt. So we paired up. But by the time we hit, I think it was Barstow, the van broke down, and we had to tow it in the rest of the way because we had
Right.
all our gear in it. We couldn't just abandon it, you know.
Right.
And so then we were all riding in the back of a Chevette, you know, like all the way back in from Barstow.
Right.
And I just remember looking around going, wow, I've never seen anything that looked like this. You know, I mean, it was, you know, vast open space. It looked like movies, you know, like the old West
Sure.
movies and stuff. I'm like, wow, this stuff really does exist, you know. But so yeah, I mean, it was. I remember. I'll just tell you one story because I think it's so funny.
Please.
And by the way, you're talking about being a veteran. We had this one guy that worked for us locally. His name was, we called him Metal Mike Forsyth. He was in the Marine Corps, and he came out anytime he was out on leave. He'd come and work security for us and help us load and all that stuff. Just a awesome hard rock fan.
Yeah.
And he followed us all the way down the freeway. I think till we hit, I don't remember exactly where, somewhere off the turnpike, and did the wave and stuff. And he came out and visited us. He had to do mechanized warfare out in San Diego and came and stayed with us a couple days when he was out on leave. But anyway,
Yeah.
so one story. So we're in a hotel in Texas, right? Of all places. And we were so tired, like we were just absolutely exhausted from driving all day. Like I don't know how many hours we drove.
Yeah.
We pull into this hotel. All of us are in one room, and what we did was we would just rotate. So there'd be two beds, so two guys would sleep in a bed in each bed, and two guys would sleep on the floor in sleeping bags, right?
Right.
And then the next night in a hotel, you just two guys got the bed and the other guys got the floor. So that's how we did it. And I just remember all of a sudden we're almost asleep, and Stu just turns on this flashlight and starts downing some of this Jack Daniels. So then it became this game. You turned a flashlight on one of the guys, and if you could get his face, he had the drink. So after a while, we're totally blitzed,
Right.
and we get into this huge pillow fight, and we're like half tanked. One of our guys, Russ, stands up on the bed. Somebody hit him right in the gut with a pillow, and he goes boom against this glass window, and the whole thing just falls out. Now, he didn't fall out. They were holding on to him, right?
Right.
So this whole window falls out. We're like, we cannot pay for this. This will be the $1,500 we have left. We jumped in our cars and took off and drove again the whole night and into the next day. I mean, it was brutal. And we had
Oh,
been drinking,
yeah.
and we didn't have cell phones. So we're like, we lost each other for a minute. And thank
Yeah.
God we hooked up at a gas station. But yeah, those some of those memories. That was one time I was just like the two. I don't think I've ever when you're that tired and a little bit drunk and you
Right.
still have to drive in the
Yeah.
heat all day.
Right.
That's a tough one, man.
And at some point, you're probably thinking, you know what? Maybe we're just doomed. Like this ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, I thought we had our moments.
Right. So when you get there and you start playing the strip, what clubs are you playing? And how long do you think it was before you felt like, hey, you know what? We got something here. Like we can hang with all these other bands.
The first place we played was Madame Wong's West.
Yeah.
And it was mildly successful. We didn't tear. I remember somebody stole all my drum mics that I had collected. And so I wasn't happy about that. But and then we started just trying to find clubs. We didn't know what to do. And then finally we wound up at the Troubadour because the whiskey wasn't a thing. They had lost their liquor license
Okay.
for a couple of years.
I've heard about that.
And it was those couple of years when we were out here. Everybody goes, "Oh, you guys started at the whiskey." We didn't. We started at the Troubadour.
Sure.
So it was either Gazzari's or the Troubadour. And if you played one, you couldn't play the other. It's just the little mafia that was happening
Sure.
then.
Sure.
And so we stuck with the Troubadour, and Eddie loved our band. We worked super hard, flyer day and night, always trying to promote. And God rest his soul, he just passed away a couple
That's
of weeks
right.
ago.
I just saw that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what a great soul. I mean, he just really believed in the band. Always wanted Poison to go back there and play again for Eddie.
Yes.
But it won't happen now,
Yeah.
obviously. But anyway, so that's where we started. But then, Poison was partially a cover band. That's how we made a living.
Sure.
We'd play 3 sets a night back east, and two of the sets were covers, and one set was our original stuff. That's how we did it.
Right.
Get everybody drunk and then play them our songs, and they think they know it, right? That was the idea.
Yeah.
And so we would go to like places, bars in like West Covina and stuff like that, and just play as a cover band
Yeah.
and make money for rent. And then just do other odd jobs, phone sales and, would you like to buy some pens, and all that stuff, that horrible stuff. Oh, and background for movies.
Yes.
There was this one person that had like weird people. That was her thing. Let's get punk rocker, all these weird people for background. And so we had all, we were glammed out in our pictures and we get
Yep.
hired for background for movies. And
Right.
so that wasn't bad. You get a couple of $100 and you get fed. So it wasn't a bad day,
I think people think that you were making money playing the clubs. You weren't making any money playing originals in the clubs. You had to play covers.
Well, so that's the thing. Out here, it is a different thing. Like it was based on people sort of playing for record companies. I mean,
Sure.
back in the day, record companies would kind of go around to these clubs and see what the new talent was.
Yep.
And it wasn't just rock. I mean, this goes all the way back to the 60s and stuff. So
Yep.
folk, it didn't matter who it was, Van Halen, whoever.
Yep.
And that kind of ended, okay. But people still go out and try to break their band by playing, newer, original
Yep.
material still.
Yep.
But at the time, like it wasn't about making money. It was about exposure,
Yep.
exposing yourself to the record industry. So
Yep.
that's where exposure bucks came from. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but you couldn't really make money. Now, but the thing is that people still talk about how um, you can get exposure, but it doesn't matter now. You're not playing for record companies. It's not a showcase town the way it used to be.
Right.
It's just not,
Yeah.
any more than I think Nashville is strictly a songwriter's town anymore. It is a songwriter's town, but it's also people go there to play and play the circuit and make a living,
Yeah.
and some people do.
Right.
Um, but now, you can play the whiskey and make money. You don't make tons of money,
Sure.
but whatever the market bears, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's changed dramatically. And I was saying
Sure.
this, I did an interview earlier. Part of the reason why I think the music industry is so difficult in Hollywood these days, you can't park. Like
Right.
literally, it's about you can't park anywhere, right? So it's
Yes.
like it makes it a major pain in the ass to go enjoy live music. It
Yeah.
really does.
Um, I just interviewed a couple days ago Chris Sheridan from the band Sweet Savage. And
Oh, okay.
and
I remember that guy.
if the story is true, they were offered your Enigma contract, turned it down, and then it went to Poison. Anyway,
Maybe.
he said that when they got to LA in '85, that the amount of lime green on the strip was unavoidable. He said they were in town, and he said the singer said those guys literally painted the Sunset Strip Poison, and that's your reputation as like the hardest working band. I don't know, like when did it occur that holy shit, like we've got something here, like we've built, it's starting to happen. When did you feel like that was true?
The November 12th gig at the Troubadour when the line was around the block. We were scared to death to show up. We drove
Right,
up in Bobby Chevette with one window broken out, with his bass sticking out the window, and we're all sitting there we're going, drove around the side of the building. It's like, that's not for us.
right,
And it was.
right,
But yeah, we did that flyer thing. Cece's parents owned a print shop. So one of the things they printed was flyers.
right.
But they didn't do it for free. I mean, they had to make a living,
Sure.
but they cut us deals, of
Yeah.
course. And one of the deals was on paper that was this color.
Right.
And we went, well, it was good enough for Kicks because they used that color. Uh, fine. If it gets attention, let's do it.
Yeah.
And that like sort of became our official color because it was that and like a fluorescent pink. And we were like, the greens, I don't know. That gets more attention
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
But we tried both. We tried, and I think we had an orange at one point too. But that green, that over the top, like day glow green, man,
Yeah.
uh, that was the way to go. And then girls started showing up to shows in these day glow green high heels. It was it's pretty cool.
Yeah. What happened with Matt makes the move? Matt Smith, your original guitar player, makes the move. And at what point, did he decide to leave, or did you guys, and I don't know how much you want to get into that, but did you guys decide, hey, we need to go in a different direction?
Matt was a good member. He always there for rehearsal, always energetic. I mean, he was, did you couldn't ask any more of the guy, really.
Yeah.
But he was a guy that, we would all go out all the time
Yeah.
and promote the band and hang out with girls and do this and that. Matt was more to himself. He was
Yeah.
definitely more quiet and stuff like that. He'd hang out. And I think the lifestyle was just not conducive to how he was.
Yeah.
But it was okay. We're like, okay, you be you. We'll make sure that you're as happy as you can be in that role, right?
Yeah.
But his girlfriend came out, and of course they did the nasty, and she got pregnant. And I think the combination of him feeling like he didn't fit in, maybe a little bit, wasn't happening for us yet. We were just like at this one level, like we couldn't get up any higher for some reason.
Right.
And maybe it was the songs, maybe I don't know. Uh, and he was just like, I need to do the responsible thing and go back and get a job and marry her and be a dad, you know?
Yeah.
And you got to respect that.
Of
So it was
course.
like, so we started holding auditions while he was still here. And he liked Slash a lot, by the
Yeah.
way. And he said he'd be willing to work with anybody, as much as he could. And we did a gig at the Troubadour. And as soon as we were done, we all went upstairs and Matt wasn't there. He went out the side door, got a cab to the airport, and just took off. And that's how he wanted to leave, you
Sure.
know. So, yeah, I love Matt.
Yeah.
Once in a great while, we talked on the phone probably about a year ago, I
Sure.
think. So yeah, it's all good with us
Yeah.
guys.
Did he ever, like, when you guys blew up, say, "Son of a bitch, what, I wish it had been
Yes,
me"? I'm sure.
yeah,
I'm
he
sure.
did. Yeah.
Of course.
But I don't know if he would have chosen a different life or not. I don't know.
Sure.
But, it wouldn't have happened with Matt.
Right.
Cece was the missing ingredient, quite
Yep.
honestly.
Yep.
Cece's a great songwriter.
Yep.
He's got a great personality on stage. It's larger than life.
Yes.
There's nobody like him in the world. I
Yes.
mean, and Slash is amazing player, but his combination in Guns N' Roses created a larger than life thing, but may not have in Poison. It may not have worked the
Sure.
same way. Who knows? But things work for a reason. We
Yeah.
got two really great bands, is the way I look at it.
Yep.
I'm taking myself out of Poison for a second. I love our band. I do, and I love Guns N' Roses. And we had this clash for a while. We were all kind of everybody sort of did that, I think, at one
Yes.
point. At one point in time, it was kind of more about who you didn't like than who you did like. You
Right.
know what I mean? It
Right.
was it was like, oh, who you hate is way more interesting, right?
Yes.
And unfortunately, I think we've continued down that path a little bit in the rock genre, and it's
Yes.
time to let that go.
Yeah. What was it close? Like, were there people who were like, "No, it's got to be Slash," and other people who were like, "No, it's got to be"? Was it close, or did you all really
It
go,
was
"No, it's
close.
CC"?
It was close. Yeah, it was. Um, I think Cece just sort of made more sense. Cece's a different kind of writer,
Yeah.
and a lot of those riffs on the first Guns N' Roses record, they're Tracy guns,
Sure. Sure.
So
Sure.
know that too. I'm not taking anything away from
No.
Slash, but I'm saying,
Yep.
Welcome to the Jungle is Tracy all over
Sure.
it.
Sure. Sure. And you
And
would later work with Tracy, like
yeah,
years later. Awesome. Okay. So, okay, you guys start getting this scene built up, and you get a deal from Enigma. You get, I mean, what was it, like 12 days and $50 to record? I'm kidding about the $50, but to record "Look What the Cat Dragged In." Were you, I mean, I think Chris Sheridan from Sweet Savage said part of the reason that they didn't take the deal is they didn't think that deal was good enough to break a band. Yet you guys on this small label with this meager budget went triple platinum. Were you shocked, or did you always think, no, that we are this good, we should explode on this album?
well, it's a little deceiving. Okay, so
Okay.
it was a $30,000. It was originally a $20,000 deal.
Yes.
and were able to get another 10. But that was for everything, all in. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about recording, mastering, printing, I mean, doing everything.
Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't just recording. I mean, it was like 12 grand for the recording. Like it wasn't a lot.
Right.
And back then it was, studio time. I mean, you're $400 a day, you're $400 for an engineer, you got to produce. I mean, you're in there. It's, typically it's a couple grand a day,
Yeah.
and so we were able to budget our way through that. And so let me see, where were we at here? So, you know, we made that record, and a lot of the territories that we had already played, we noticed where it was selling. We had played Texas, we had played Arizona, we had played different parts of California. We were watching those sales
Yep.
happen. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So
Yep.
we're like, we got a tour, even on a shoestring.
Sure.
And everywhere we'd go into the record stores and go, the record's not there. I'm gonna call up Enigma, hey man, the record's not here. And they'd ship it there and then it would sell. And this it was a real grassroots thing
Yeah.
that we had going on. And by the way, the cover, by the way, we've gotten so much crap for that cover. I wouldn't change a thing, but the way that went down, okay. So Tommy Lee's sister Athena did our makeup on that
Yeah.
record. Okay. And that they used something to clean Cece's face and he broke out. Okay. I mean, like he had these big red things, pustules, like it was, and we didn't know what to do, right? So they kept caking those shit on, right? And still, even after that, they weren't able to completely cover it up. All
Right.
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 So we turned in these photos and we're like, we don't know what to do. And they go, don't worry about it. We got an airbrush guy. Well, when you have this big of a budget, your
Right.
airbrush guy, and it wasn't Photoshop back then, it was literally an airbrush, right?
Right.
They go in and then they rephotograph it after you airbrush it. That's how that's done. And so this guy laid it on. He's like, well, if I do it on CC, I got to do it on everybody else because it doesn't. Let's just make it look like a Nagel painting.
Right.
Really, that's
Right.
how it went.
Right.
So we saw that thing and we're like, we're glam, but we're not quite that far. I mean,
Right.
come on, guys. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we're a little more trashy than that.
Right.
And there was no more money. They're like, nope, we're printing it. We're going for it. They, it's great. We think it's great. Just sign over it when you sign these, whatever.
Right.
We couldn't really argue. So it went out like that. You know what I mean? And then it turned out to be the most divisive, over the top. Fucking people freaked out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it was since the New York Dolls, right? And it
Yes.
was like, so yeah, it was crazy.
But how iconic. I mean, I don't know if there was ever a point where you regretted it, but I mean, that is one of the iconic. I mean, people, and I don't know how you feel about the term hair metal, or glam metal or whatever, but that picture is, I think, the most iconic image in the history of that scene, that cover.
You know what? Back then, what we were battling was not hair metal because that
Right.
didn't exist,
Of
that
course.
term.
Of course.
People, it was glitter rock and glam rock, right?
Right.
That's what people were.
Yep.
And we got accused of trying to recreate the glitter rock of the 70s. And it's like, well, a little bit, but it doesn't end there because some of our songs have more Van Halen influence.
Yep.
We've even, and stuff like that. So it's not simply that punky glitter thing, anthem thing only.
Yep.
There's more to it than that. Hair metal came in. I remember the first time I heard that, it was with a journalist that hated us
Yeah.
and just called it hair metal.
Yeah.
Well, hair metal. And I was like, what the hell is that? Like,
Yeah.
that's okay, whatever. Nice. Thank you. And it stuck. I don't even
Yeah.
know who the journalist was,
Yep.
but it stuck and it started to be, and it's like, I don't really want to embrace it because I don't like the way that sounds.
Right.
It's just like,
Right.
but now I just kind of went, okay, fine, whatever.
Yes.
Hair metal. It sounds so stupid, like a piece of metal with hair all over. I don't know. It's just goofy. But people have tried to put our genre down so much over the
Yep.
years. If
Yes.
they didn't like it, or they didn't understand it, or they weren't part of it, it's a way of kind of putting it down. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And not taking it seriously or whatever. But I think it's worked to our advantage. I said, when we've been talking about the 2026 tour possibly coming up, or
Yep.
hopefully we're going to do this for, I want to call it Poison versus the World because it's always been that way.
Yes.
It's always been that way. We've never been the industry darlings. Never.
Yes.
Even to this day, Rolling Stone, the best compliment they gave us was the last band standing. But that's it. Nobody in the industry, but except the fans. It's really Poison and the fans. That's it. And thankfully, there's guys like you and stuff like that who are in the industry now that also happen to be fans. So
Yes.
we're winning with that. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? But I think that it's kept us a little bit. The people love an underdog. So in some ways, it's kind of cool. You know what I mean? You
Yes.
can get oversaturated, and
Yep.
everybody likes you. Look what's happening with Britney Spears. I mean, or not Britney Spears. I'm sorry, Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think she's a huge megastar and she deserves everything, that she's doing because she's worked hard all her life. But I mean, she's just so oversaturated that some people are turning on her. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? This happens, it
Yeah.
just does.
And yeah, yeah, you guys never you were never the critics' darlings. I mean, most media was gonna shit on you guys, on the genre,
Hmm.
but you've kept for here we are, damn near 40 years later, and who's got the last laugh? I mean, I think it's why are you guys not in contention for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Not that I care about that thing, but why not? You guys
I
started it,
I don't know.
it's anyway, I mean, we could go on about
I
that.
don't know. I mean, that'd be cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, that'd be cool, but I don't expect that,
No, I mean, no.
if it works out, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do what we do, uh, I'm proud of it. I mean, I love the style. I don't regret stuff.
No.
I've had times in my life where I've regretted certain things. I look back and I go, "Ooh, maybe we shouldn't have done that." You know what I mean? But
Right.
it's been all part of the journey. You know what
Sure.
I'm saying? That's
Sure.
that's life. I mean, you can't make perfect decisions all throughout your career. Even Prince and Michael Jackson and the mega stars, Madonna and all these mega stars, they've had major mishaps throughout
Yes.
their career at different
Yep.
points in time. And so, I mean, that's life. We all go through things, and of course your band's going to go through it.
Was there a point, I mean, you look back at early Poison and it is nonstop fun. You look at the videos of the first album. Was there a point where it turned from music entertainment to where you realized, damn, this really is the music business? Maybe something happened where you're like, I don't, was there a point where it went from fun to damn, it really is a business?
Yes, and it's that record. It's sitting right behind you. Open up and say, "Ah." We
Yep.
we did two covers for that, okay? And Bobby and I were largely responsible for that imaging, by the
Yeah.
way. Neil
Yeah.
Zlozauer took that photo. That's Bobby Doll's girlfriend.
Oh, no. Okay.
Was back then.
Yep.
Her name was Bambi. And we kind of decorated her and did all this stuff. We had help. We had a girl that helped us with makeup, and she did some of it. I just remember we just want something over the top, like,
Yep.
and we had this tongue that my friend Mark Williams built. He was a special effects artist. And but then Walmart got
Yeah.
looked at this record and they went, "No, this is freaking straight demonic. Like we don't want this on our shelves. We're a family friendly store." And we're like, "I don't care." And our management sat us down and went, "Okay, Walmart is right now about 38-40% of your sales right now. I mean, that's where everybody's getting the records from. Do you want to be in the record cover business or the music business? You
Right.
decide. If that cover is more important than the music that's inside it, then kill Walmart because they won't carry it." And there's a lot of fans that won't get that record. And we made the decision. We said, we're in the music business. at the end of the day, you're listening to it. Not, I mean, it's cool to look at a
Yeah.
record, but already it was changing to cassettes and CDs. I mean, things were starting to change anyway. So it just wasn't that important. And it actually worked to our advantage because then the records that were shipped out that had the full image
Yeah.
became, these
Collector's item.
collector's items. And a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, oh, you did that deliberately. We didn't do it
Right.
deliberately. We just really thought it was important. We didn't want to tell Walmart to go F themselves. I mean, we wanted to continue to I mean, they became a bigger retailer. I love the days when there were small independent record
Yes.
stores everywhere, but
Yeah.
that business had started to change dramatically by then. And but at least there was still enough of those record stores where we could go do meet and greets and in-store record appearances. You couldn't do that at Walmart, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So thank God for all those independents that hung in there as long as they did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of the few that are still out there now, I think is super cool.
Yeah. Is it and now look how tame that cover would be these days. I mean, you know.
Yeah, right. I mean, Miley Cyrus uh, used that image.
Yeah.
She put herself in that makeup, did that, and sold it as a T-shirt. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
it's a Miley Cyrus shirt of her in the Open Up and Say "Ah" makeup. It's so cool.
So that album comes out and blows up. Do you remember when you first heard that Every Rose hit number one? I mean, that's gotta, I imagine, gotta be one of the biggest moments of your career, I would think. What was that like?
Absolutely. Yeah. I told this story in my book too. So I was getting into Harleys at the time, and I had a I forget what I had then, maybe a Sportster or something is what I could afford. And I was looking at this one used bike. It was a Softail Custom, and I was like, man, this thing was bitching. It had Delorto carbs on it. And so I was just like drooling over this thing, and the salesman's like, hey, take it for a drive. And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't afford it. I'm not there yet. And he goes, it doesn't matter. Just take it for a drive. Maybe other people see it and you and sell it. I don't know. And I'm like, okay, I know I can't afford it. So I drove it. I rode home, decided to get my jacket on because it was getting chilly. I'm
Yeah,
like, I'm going to go out for the day on this bike, really freaking enjoy it.
yeah.
When I got home, I listened to, it was, tape back then, listened to my answering machine and one after the other, congratulations, your song went to number one. Congratulations, your song went to number one. I call up and I'll take the bike. And I still didn't have the money, but I knew I was
Right.
going to get the money. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And so yeah, I took that bike, and yeah, that was wild. But then 2 weeks later, our security guy Chemo passed away, and so it really kind of tainted uh, that period in time a little bit. We couldn't enjoy that number one in the same way that we could have if that wouldn't have happened. So, we had this big high from that number one, but then that low from what happened to chemo. So,
I
yeah,
and I knew of his death, and I don't know what did he die of, if you can say, and if you can't, I completely get it. Like what happened?
you know what? There's a little bit. It was kind of like he was upset over a girl, and I think, and he didn't do drugs. It wasn't something he did, but he did that day,
Okay,
and he didn't know how much to do or not do,
sure,
and I think he just thought he would just. I don't know for
yeah,
sure, 100%, but
sure,
it wasn't suicide. He didn't try to do it. I think it was death by misadventure.
okay,
You know what
okay,
I mean?
okay.
My
Uh,
understanding. I might be wrong,
right.
but all the information I collected, and his daughter's still. I mean, his family's still around. So I don't want to say something wrong.
Right. Completely get it. Okay, so open up and say then Flesh and Blood comes out, goes triple platinum. And we were talking, it was before I hit record, but you come from a military family. I told you that I was in the service for 22 years. I'm a veteran. And the song Something to Believe In, and you dedicated part of that song to chemo, and part of that song is about military veterans. So could you
Mm.
kind of just tell the audience a little bit about,
Yeah.
your military family background and how you, because Poison has always been known as patriotic, supporter of veterans. So I just think that's a big draw for me for your band.
Yeah, so my dad was in the Marine Corps. My uncle was in the Army Air Corps, 142 missions over enemy territory in South Pacific. Um, my cousin was in the Marine Corps. Another cousin was in the Army, was in Vietnam. He committed suicide from depression.
Oh yeah.
But when we were on our first tour, a lot of our road crew guys, several were vets that
Yeah.
had loved the music business, and they got out and they got back into the music business. And just seeing so many, one of them had Agent Orange, his legs were all messed up, and um, we'd see some of the things in the stories and stuff these guys would go through, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And we're like, man, they're just not, and they're working for us, like when we're a bunch of kids,
Right.
so we're a bunch of whiny bitches, and these guys have been through hell, and it's like, uh, the least thing that we owe them is some respect with a song, with our
Right.
dedication. We sent 30,000 CDs to Iraq when that war happened.
Yep.
I remember one guy said the tank crews were cruising in with come hell or high water, blasting out of the speakers,
Yep.
and that was like such a proud moment,
Yep.
But yeah, very, no matter what political reasons get us into things,
Yes.
are men and women like yourself that are, that are dedicated to protecting the United States. That's a different story. It doesn't matter the reason why.
Yep.
You're there to do a job, and our guys always do a great job. I didn't serve. I was an EMT, so I was a first responder.
Sure.
And so I feel like I did some duty for my
Ab-
community at least.
Absolutely.
But I wish I would have had that space in my life, but my life went the way it went, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to complain,
And and not to, but as a big fan, I mean, we were in Iraq in 2003, and I lived in a small tent with two other guys, and we go out on missions, and they were big fans of your band too. So, we listened to a lot of Poison in Iraq in 03, 04. So, uh,
There wasn't a day go by that we didn't think about that. There was so many, Brett's sisters was in the military during that time. Big John, he was a sniper.
yeah,
Uh, so, I mean, we've always been tied in with it. We're from Pennsylvania, man. I mean, we're right by a Navy base. I mean,
yeah,
you can't separate yourself.
yeah,
We're always gonna, have our support for people. And my son wants to be in the army, so we'll
yeah,
see what happens.
yeah. I don't want to get into like dark days, but every scene has an end, right? I mean, in 1990, you guys go triple platinum. In 91, here comes Nirvana playing Smells Like Teen Spirit in September on MTV. And I don't know how much you want to go into it, or if you want to, but like, what was that like? You guys did come out in 93 with an album, Native Tongue, that did go gold, but what was that experience like, seeing the scene that you guys helped create start to grow out of favor?
Yeah, so I mean, so Native Tongue is two times platinum now, by the
Okay.
way. But
Okay.
yeah, it shipped gold or it
Yep.
shipped
Okay.
platinum, but so sold gold, and then it finally sold through platinum, but it took
Sure.
longer. We
Sure.
noticed that change. But
Yep.
Cece wasn't in the band, so
Yep.
that was a big change.
Yep.
Yeah, they were dark days for us. That wasn't a scene that I was plugged into. But at the same time, it was the last kind of rock and roll revolution, really, if you think about it.
Right.
And I understood absolutely why that came into favor.
Yep.
I totally got it because I feel like there were so many bands that were disingenuous, or they were just trying to find a trend or just do anything they could just to get, to kind of ride that wave, you know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
And they were missing the point. People started to dress like us. And then we get thrown out with that whole, we started to dress different. If you look at the way those records started to look, we didn't look like our first record anymore.
Exactly.
They were looking like our first record, and then people were trying to say that we still look like them. We don't.
Yeah.
But so we made an effort to keep evolving, very hard effort. We used different producers on each record so that somebody couldn't say, oh, well, it's because of the producer that they're successful.
Right.
We wanted everything to be on our own. We had always done everything on our own in that way, and we wanted to continue to do that. And that's what we did. So, I remember when it was on my birthday, we were in Mexico City and we were playing in Mexico City. I think we had already played. We went to a club and it was August 8th because it was my birthday, I remember. And I got hammered. I got hammered because the alcohol content's higher. Okay.
Right.
That's it. I was like, I forget how many,
Yeah.
and I'm feeling it. And Sounds Like Teen Spirit came on. And the whole attitude of the room changed. And I remember I didn't like the attitude of the room. It didn't feel like a party anymore. I felt kind of dissident a little bit. But yet at the same time, I understood it. It was like, again, there was so many bands that were bullshit that did deserve to get knocked off their high horse.
Yep.
And that's what that genre did. I get why that happened. And there was a lot of people who were growing up where they didn't grow up, but they were growing up with a different kind of frustration. Poison projected. A lot of our songs were projection, especially the first record. We didn't have squat. I mean, we were, four guys from a steel town,
Yep.
moved out here, lived in a warehouse. We didn't drive down the Sunset Strip in a ragtop car and pick up chicks.
Right.
We were flyering we wanted that life.
Right.
So we wrote about it. It
Yeah.
was projection, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I feel like the sort of the Nirvana era was like a different kind of projection. It was like it was this frustration. It was like, we're not going to project. We're going to tell you what we're mad about, what we're upset about, the real life part of growing up in suburbia and all these different subjects that were pretty important to talk about again. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like the way punk rock came about
Yep.
and that symbolize, any real revolution has to have a social movement associated with it. It's not just a sound. You know what I mean? David Lee Roth said one time that rock and roll's always been about haircuts and shoes. From the outside, it looks like that,
Yeah.
but I think true revolution comes from the youth going through something, a change, and not identifying with the previous generation and going, no, you think that, but I don't think that.
Right.
I think that's going to happen. That's if I don't like the divide in the politics that's happening right now, but it will create something. I don't know what yet,
Yeah.
but it's going to create
Yeah.
a music revolution of some kind,
Right.
because it always comes through. Something in art will reflect all this
Right.
eventually. It'll be interesting to see for
Yeah.
sure.
You mentioned Cece not being in the band, and in 1991, you guys played the MTV Video Music Awards, and that doesn't go well. Cece's obviously struggling at that time. What was, if you can take us back to that I don't know, either that night or just the decision that, hey, Cece is not well, he can't be here anymore. What was that like?
Well, there's more to that story.
Sure.
Okay. So Brett and I went to, I forget, one of the award shows about 2 months prior to that.
Yep.
And Aerosmith played. And in between, like when they do commercial breaks, most musicians just stand there, you know what I mean? Or somebody will come up and talk or whatever. Aerosmith was like playing songs in between.
Yep.
And we're like, we want to do that.
Yep.
Like if we ever do one of these, let's do that. Like, so that's what we talked about, but we weren't communicating that well as a band. There was this dissonance among us with long tours and some fights and different things, but not horrible, but enough that we weren't communicating
Right.
properly.
Right.
We didn't rehearse for that.
Sure.
So it was audible. Hey, audience is taking a break. Let's play a song.
Yeah.
We started to forget what song we were supposed to play
Right.
when we were live and when nobody was cueing us. We didn't know what the hell. I'm sitting there going, are we on or not on? Like, I don't even know. Who should I listen to? Arsenio Hall or Brett or who, who's in charge here?
Yeah. Yeah.
We should have just not done anything except the songs that we were supposed to play. Okay.
Right.
And it would have been fine, except
Right.
CC's chord came out. But
Yeah.
I think that was out of frustration. I think he just plugged it in really quick.
Right.
That was like a amateur mistake that he had never made in his life.
Yep.
Okay, or not in his life, but professionally. I don't ever remember that
Sure.
happening. It was just a faux pas. It was all these things just cascaded, you know what I mean? But there wasn't any physical fight backstage.
Okay.
Like everyone talks about that physical fight. There was a physical fight a long time before that, but not that night. Everybody just kind of went their own way. It was
Sure.
very lonely. It was the worst ever. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. It was just, I just knew it was a bad night. I knew it spelled some real trouble for us.
Yeah.
It was really shitty. It was a shitty day.
Sure. So and again, I don't know what you can get into, but the decision that CC is no longer, I mean that had to be hard to make.
I didn't want to let him go. I wanted to just take a break for a while. I
Okay.
thought that would be a good idea. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
I feel like we all needed to heal a little bit, but we were getting a lot of pressure to keep going, and we had to do something.
Sure.
We had to make some kind of a decision. And, Cece was, he was upset because he took the brunt of that
Yep.
blame for everything. And I just so we just made the decision to get somebody else and go and move into a new era.
Yep.
Let's just try a whole new approach, to our music, to everything. Things are changing anyway.
Yeah.
Let's preserve this. Let's evolve, and let's evolve quickly. You
Right.
know what I mean? We're hanging on to too much,
Sure.
from the past. It doesn't mean we have to ignore it, but let's move forward. And we did. We made a great record. We made
Yeah.
two great videos. I'm proud of everything I did on that record. Everything.
Right.
Richie definitely, I've had my issues with Richie over the years, but I mean, he definitely helped me go to another level. I can't complain about, again, this was a learning experience. But when I realized that that record didn't go crazy compared, I mean, a lot of new bands would have been very happy to go
Absolutely.
gold, right? But compared to like 6 million and stuff like that, we were looking and going, oh man, the storm came in, didn't it? And I just decided I I had a buddy that was an artist, and I got into the comic book world. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to play. And I don't want, I can't pretend that I'm part of the grunge scene. I'm not part of
Yeah.
it. I'd be
Right.
disingenuous.
Right.
Yeah, that's a real poser. And
Yeah.
a lot of our contemporaries were doing that.
That's
I'm
right.
sitting there looking at them going, really? Like that's not you.
Right.
Who's writing this stuff? You know what I mean? It's like no one's going to buy that from Poison. That's death, man.
Sure.
So we didn't do that.
Right.
We just, we evolved, but we didn't go grunge. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
The grunge bands were good at doing grunge. Let them do it.
Yeah.
How am I going to compete with the ingredient they had going for them? You
Right.
know what I mean? We were making pancakes, they were making eggs, like whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Sure.
Why can't you have them together? But that's how the music business gets
That
sometimes. People get at each other's throat.
when those bands came out, most of us just thought, hey, here's a new style of rock. We thought they could coexist. What upset, I think, a lot of the fans was when it was, no, you have to make a decision. If you
Right.
like this style of music, you cannot like the other style. And
Yeah, it did get that way. But like Alice in Chains opened several
that's right. Yep.
shows for us. We got along with them. A couple
Yep.
guys would come out and close the set with us and stuff like that. And we stayed friends with them for a long time. But but that's it. That's as close as we sort of got to that. But I think the next phase was, at the same time there was this growing electronica
Yeah.
movement happening, techno and stuff like that. And the rock people were going, that's not me. And there's some rapish stuff going on. And then and what we wound up getting was industrial.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was 9 Inch Nails and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And people just trying to find their thing. And a lot of rock people went to that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
A lot of people that didn't make people that were in glam bands went to that.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So that definitely, and my wife was in an industrial band. Um, so yeah, it's funny how all that goes. And then honestly, uh, Kid Rock kind of came out and he was doing, sort of rap rock, but at least he was kind of going like, I got long hair and I want to hang out with girls and be a rock
Yes.
star again. And
Yep.
Marilyn Manson came out and was another rock star. Like there was rock stars again for
Yes.
a minute.
Yes.
And it kind of like opened it up
Yeah.
again because we were perceived I think grunge was perceived as the anti-rock star, you
Yes.
know what I mean? And we were perceived as the rock star,
Yep.
excess,
Yeah.
kings of excess, all that stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so it has started to fall into favor again, and I think we got favored because we didn't abandon what we did,
Yes.
and we were one of the first people on the scene really
Yes.
to do what we did. It was genuine. Um, I always felt genuine about it.
Yeah.
Sure, we borrowed from different bands,
Yep.
everybody does, but we borrowed as much from the Beatles and Leonard Skinner as we did anybody else, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's so
So,
funny when somebody
yeah.
sees this obvious stuff, they go after those obvious things and never. Anyway, go ahead. I'm
No.
sorry.
After Native Tongue, and you guys, you talked about wanting to, hey, take a break. Hey, this style isn't us, but you did. It came out in 2000. There was the Crack a Smile album, but can you just briefly tell, because you get Blues Saraceno. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Blues and
Saraceno. Yeah.
Saraceno.
Uh-huh.
In the band, you guys record an album with and it didn't come out until years later. Can you just briefly talk about what happened with that?
Yeah, the record company didn't want to put it out. I
Okay.
mean, they didn't. Dwayne Barron and John Purdell produced that. John Purdell just reached, or I mean, I'm sorry, John passed away. Dwayne Barron reached out to me recently, a couple days ago, and said, "Hey, that went double platinum. Can I get a platinum record?" I'm like, God, I haven't asked for one of those in 20 years.
Right.
I'll find out for you. So
Right.
hopefully, Dwayne, I can do that for you if you're listening.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, I love that record.
Yes. Yes.
It was
Yes.
a really cool record. Blues, I'm still friends with Blues. And maybe
Okay.
every couple of months we'll say hi to each other.
Yeah.
And but he was actually considered when we got Richie, he was actually one of the two guys we had thought about. Blues was like 18 years old playing with Cream
Right.
in Egypt. Like, not even kidding you. Where's this guy at? He's with Cream in Egypt right now. I'm
Yeah.
like, really?
Yeah.
Wow. But anyway, we wound up with Richie, but then, a few years later, Blues had been around and he's a great player, dude. I mean,
Totally.
he's a monster. And he had a great groove and he played a lot of odd time signatures and things like that. It really challenged me and I loved the challenge. I really did. It was just different, but it wasn't trying to be grunge. It wasn't
No.
trying to
No.
be, it was, to me, it was just another step on the evolution of Poison at that time.
Right.
I really feel that. So I was proud of that record. I'm still
Yeah.
proud of it. I've listened to a couple things I wouldn't have done. But I listened to the bulk of that record. I go, it's a freaking cool record.
Yes, I think a lot of hardcore Poison fans, of which I am, who and I enjoyed some of Native Tongue. I mean, it got a little bluesier than I thought but I mean, there was some really good stuff on Native Tongue. But I think a lot of us felt like Crack a Smile was that. A lot of us felt like Crack a Smile was the record that if you weren't into Native Tongue as much as the other records, Crack a Smile felt like that natural progression, and a lot of us loved that record.
Crack a Smile may have worked better if you switched
The
that
tones.
around, if that would have came out, because it was a little more loose, a little more fun, a little
Yes.
more poisony.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It may have worked better. Blues is not. It wasn't. He's not. Blues is less bluesy, of
Yeah.
all things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so it may have worked better. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
it's hard to say. I mean, people may have rejected anything other than
Right.
CC or anything Poison at that time.
Right.
I felt like I just wanted to duck away for a little while. I
Yep.
didn't think it was a great time to try to force what we were doing on anybody
Right.
and say, no, no, wait a minute. We got another way of doing it. Now, if that didn't work, let's try that. I didn't want to do that. Look, this is just us. If you don't like it, we're gonna have to wait it out for a minute.
Right.
But when CC came back and we put tickets on sale for a tour, and we were almost sold out within the first hour,
Yeah.
I was like, the gods of music have shined upon us, and uh, I feel like the luckiest person in the world. So it's we've been a very lucky band in many, many, many ways.
Right. And I think part of you guys taking that break in the mid 90s and building up that desire for you guys to come back, because when you guys came back in around 99, you played around, because I'm in Fargo, North Dakota right now, and you guys played around here, and it would be 14,000 people were seeing you in Fargo, North Dakota, which is a town of about 120,000 people. It was unreal, the desire to have Poison, and you guys played around here like 3 or 4 times over the next couple of years when you guys came
Yeah.
back. So it was
I,
amazing.
I got I got a Fargo story
No
too.
way.
Okay. Yeah. So I bought a motorcycle in Fargo.
No way.
Okay. I bought a Triumph Scrambler, and I got dressed that day, and we were playing an outdoor place that it was like a mud track, okay?
Yeah.
And it
Yes.
had rained, okay? It
Yes.
had rained. But it wasn't raining that day, so it was drying up, but there was still mud, right?
Yeah.
And I got this brand new Triumph Scrambler. I was fully ready for the show. And I said, screw it, man. I'm going around that track. I
Yeah.
went blasting around that track. And the only thing that was bad about that motorcycle is that the front fender was about this high off that front tire.
Yeah.
And the mud got up in there
Right.
and stopped that front tire. And I just went flying down. I had mud all over me. And they're like, oh, showtime in 7 minutes. And I'm like, I, really? I couldn't take a shower. I went on stage like I mean, I think I changed my shirt, but that
Right.
was it. I went on with Fargo dirt track mud all over me that night. And it was like the best show ever.
The people here are going to love that, because anytime somebody mentions Fargo, it becomes a big deal when you're in Fargo. Um, so
No, people are great there, man.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a good time. We got to come back.
yes,
Let's do it now.
and
Get Rockett Mafia there. We got to do that. Yeah.
and we're going to get into Rockett Mafia here in
Yeah.
just a second. And I remember when you guys came to Fargo, you sold the place out of beer. That had never happened before. That
We
they ran
we
out
can
of beer at a concert. So you guys got that going for you. Kudos to you.
Yeah, yeah. We're like rock's biggest bartenders.
Right, right, right. So you guys put out Hollyweird in 2002. That's the last Poison. And I know you hear this question all the time, but everybody in my circle, obviously music doesn't sell like, it's not the huge moneymaker. I know you have expressed an interest in getting back in the studio. Is there ever talk, and what do you think is the holdup with you guys maybe putting out some new stuff because you do still periodically tour, and we're going to be touring hopefully next year. You said in 2026. Is there any chance of new Poison music?
I I I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sitting right here. I would do it, in a minute. I have a little studio out here. Mick and I worked out here. We worked up "I Think I Love You" by that was formerly a Partridge Family song.
Yes.
So I mean, I'm ready to work. I love it. I love touring and I love recording.
Yep.
I love the involvement on both ends of the music business, that like
Right.
not the business part.
Right.
I hate the business part of it.
Right.
But playing and recording, I'm anytime, man, I'm good to go.
Yeah. So you did put out a shit. Now what was it called? In 2003, the glitter album.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And you put out that album, which was 70s glitter rock covers.
Hmm.
You put out the album with Tracy in 2015, Devil City Angels, and now you're back with Rockett Mafia. Just like you said, released a cover of the Partridge Family song, "I Think I Love You," and you just talked about are you guys going to do more music, or is that something that's in the
Yes.
cards? Okay.
Yes, we are. And a lot of people have said, why doesn't Poison do some of these deeper cuts? We'd love it on the Poison tour. I don't know if we ever will because when we sit down, everybody will say like, yeah, it'd be fun to do that, but people want the hits and you only have
Yeah.
so much time.
Yeah.
Thank God we have a bevy of hits.
Yeah.
So with this band, we're going to start doing some of the deep cuts, by the
Okay.
way, that
Okay.
that Poison will never play live, probably.
Sure.
So there's that. But the way this whole thing started was I jammed with Chevy Metal, Taylor Hawkins' band, uh, several years ago when Taylor was still alive. I went up and played. He sang, and afterwards we were talking. He goes, "Man, you got to do this. You got to do a cover thing." And I said, "Yeah, but I had Devils and Angels." He goes, "No, no, no. You got to do a cover thing. It's more." You don't have to be responsible for a bunch of stuff. It's just fun. You have your band, your main band, Poison, and you do this and you enjoy yourself. And I'm like, oh, it's probably a good idea, but I didn't do it. And then I'm part of this thing called the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. It's to benefit men's mental health and prostate cancer.
Yes.
And it's something I've been a part of for a long time. I'm one of the city co-hosts. And they looked at me and they said, we've never had entertainment. Can you have any ideas? And I said, well, maybe if I called up the Chevy Metal guys and I'm like, remember I filled in for you a while back? Um, could you fill in for me? I need to put together something for this.
Wow.
But I wanted Brandon to sing, and it was a little experiment. So I put together a bunch of cover songs, and we went and played this event. And afterwards, I looked at Brandon and I said, "We need to do this. Not with these guys. They have their own thing. They were good enough to lend themselves to us, but let's put something together." And that's when I did. I kind of dug into it. Called up Jim Lentz from TNT, my manager, and I said, "Can you help me with this? I don't know the business end of this." Sure. So we put it together, and that's it. I've been just kind of doing it on a whim. Like it's not this, and I don't know how to do a band without it being a band.
Yeah.
Like the first thing I want to do is do photos and cool stuff, and they're like, "Yeah, but this is a cover thing. It's not enough for me." You
Sure.
know,
Sure.
I want to take it to the next step, and I talked to Mick and Brandon. They're like, "Yeah, let's write some stuff too. Let's do it all. Why
Yeah.
not? You know, let's have some fun with it." And so that's what we're doing.
So you got Brandon from who was in the Devil City Angels with you. You got Mick Sueda who was in the Bullet Boys, and you guys have already released a single. You've done a few shows. What's the tour? And I'm sure it's not like you're going to do a massive tour, but what kind of show plans are you hoping to get with Rockett Mafia over the rest of this year?
Well, we've put together like we're playing Summerfest.
Yep.
There's like six shows or something that we've got coming up, and
Yep.
hopefully more. Not enough to do a tour,
Yeah.
okay?
Right.
We don't have the history for that yet.
Sure.
But so for this year, we'll just be doing a bunch of select shows here and there. And they're fly-ins, and they're a
Yep.
little bit tough because you don't have your own gear and all that stuff.
Right.
You get there and your drum set's an erector set. Okay, build it now.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I've done that before.
Yep.
Um, it's we're just going to take it one little step at a time and have fun with it and keep it in the place where it's more of a celebration of music
Sure.
rather than, we're here to melt your face. Like, I want to celebrate rock and roll with everybody. And it's our take on some of these 70s songs. A lot of bands have done cover stuff. They usually pick a different batch of songs. We're trying to take stuff that maybe isn't ordinarily covered and give it a hard rock spin to it.
Yep.
That's our goal. You know what I
Right.
mean? And do some of the Poison deep cuts. I think that's a great thing to add to it because people have asked for that. And I'm like, why not? Brandon came up with that idea, and I was like, it's right there in front of us. Like, why not? Right?
Here,
And Mick's fine with it.
personal opinion is that Love on the Rocks on Open Up and Say I should have been a single. And so there's my request, Love on the Rocks, if you decide
People
to add.
requested Ball and Chain also.
Yes.
That's so I was
And
like,
Life
yeah, I
Loves a
love that song.
Tragedy might be in my top four
My
favorite
favorite.
Poison songs of all time.
Yes, that's my
Oh,
fave.
yes. Okay. Okay, so we got Rockett Mafia stuff coming up. You're writing a book. So man, I mean, I'm super pumped about that because I'm hoping that you'll get into the deep history of the Spectres, Paris. What's the story on that? Do we have a time frame on the Rikki Rockett book?
Yeah, it's supposed to be released July 15th. That's the speculative date. And it's done. I mean, it's been
Okay.
done for a while.
Sure.
I've needed to read it through again
Yep.
for mistakes or whatever. And I started to, and I'm just like, you know what? I just finished it. But I'm to that place now where I got to sit down and read it. But yeah, it's called Ghost Notes, and it's kind of poignant parts of my life
Yep.
through the lens of being the drummer for Poison,
Sure.
basically.
I'm excited about that. And 2026, we're talking about the big tour, and I just again coming from a fan's perspective, wouldn't that be the perfect time to put out like a Poison box set, some sort of commemorative merchandise, vinyl box? Anyway, I don't know, is there any talks of doing that?
Uh, No, we're talking about the tour, and hopefully that will come together. But I think that's a great idea, and I do think that makes a ton of sense. Some people say, "Oh, you're just repackaging the same thing,"
Oh,
but so what? Like you don't have to buy it then. You know
right,
what I mean? But
right.
but I think that it's like refreshing it a little
Yes.
bit. We could remaster a couple things, and I'd
Right.
love to do newer material and throw it out there
Yes.
too. I think it'd be great. Even if it's, it just keeps you a little more relevant to do that kind
Yes.
of stuff. Lets people know you're thinking of the fans and, you know.
And if you threw in some of the old flyers that you guys, just obviously it's going to be covers or duplicates, but
God, somebody sent me, I don't have it close by, but somebody sent me some old flyers that they had collected. And they're
right.
like, you know,
That would,
take
yeah,
them. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm keeping
absolutely.
them for my kids. Right now they look at it and go, is that really daddy?
Yeah,
But one day, maybe they'll look at it a little differently and say, wow, that was kind of neat that he did that stuff back then.
absolutely.
You know?
I kind of briefly touched on that you had a cancer scare, and I think that was in 2015, and I think it was throat cancer. Can you just maybe briefly touch on that and how that impacted you? Because I got to imagine that's
Yeah.
got to be a traumatic experience.
Well, it kind of took Devil City Angels down with it. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't work. It took my drum company down with it.
Yeah.
I was building drums. I couldn't do that anymore. Um, yeah, for a year I fought cancer. It sucked. It was the worst battle of my life. At one point, it wasn't working. The treatment wasn't working. They were looking at removing my tongue, giving me a bag, a stoma, all that. And I had one doctor that said, there may be another way. It's called immunotherapy, and it's a novel approach, but I don't know if you'll like the numbers, but and it might get too far along where there's of no return. You can't do surgery anymore, and you'll die. So I decided I'm going to roll the dice. I don't want to live like that. And Dr. Ezra Cohen down at Moore's Cancer Center took me on as a patient, put me on a clinical trial, and said, I think we do have time. I think we can do this. And you know, 12 weeks later, I was cancer free. It was the most amazing thing ever. I do have side effects,
Sure.
but it's 9 years ago now. In July, it'll be 9 years. So, it's well in the rearview mirror. So
Right.
I'm in a great place.
That's awesome. And so, okay, we talked about Rockett Mafia. We talked about the book. And you also run a couple of YouTube channels. You have The Poison Drummer and you have Rikki Rockett's Legend Tripping. By the way, I just saw you posted today that The Poison Drummer hit 40,000 subscribers, which I don't
Yeah,
care who you
yeah.
are. I mean, that's a fantastic number. So, can you tell us
It's not bad. It's hard these days. Yeah.
Absolutely. So can you briefly touch on what you do on the Poison Drummer and what you do on the Legend Tripping channel? And because I've been watching a lot of your videos, I watch all the Poison vlogs, the Legend Tripping. Was you did one of your last videos was going to see the bridge from the Lost Boys.
Mhm.
So fascinating stuff. Can you just briefly touch on those?
Yeah, so Ricky Rockett's legend tripping is mainly comes from the angle of a urban legend. I love urban legends, so
Yeah.
I look at urban legends to a particular lens.
Yep.
I don't judge whether it's paranormal, whether it's true crime, whether it's myth. Yeah, I just kind of go into it and go, okay, let's get the story. We'll figure it out.
Yep.
We'll figure out what it is.
Yes.
Maybe it's a combination of all those things in different measures.
Right.
And so that's the idea. That's how I go about things. So there's that channel. And so I handle spooky stories and sometimes we just do fun stuff. We'll call scary numbers or
Sure.
whatever. But sometimes it's just urbex, meaning, urban adventure, just some dilapidated, go check it out. I don't know if
Yeah.
anything happened here or not. So there's that. The Poison Drummer was, uh, I was like yearning to do some videos about different drums and different things. And I'm like, I don't have a channel for that. Oh, on YouTube, you have to have a niche, really.
Right.
And then I looked and like I realized that some other people were doing like they were the brand and their channel was just whatever. Like Jason Momoa has a channel. He rides motorcycles, he acts, he does this, he does a million different things, right?
Right.
Now he's much bigger than I am, of
Right.
course. But I thought, well, why not? Why not? People are interested in me doing stuff with my kids, interested in drumming, they're interested in my four by fours, my motorcycles. It's just a catch-all for it's a lifestyle channel. That's what
Right.
it is. Travel, everything. You know what I
Right.
mean? So that's the channel for that. And that's taken off more actually than the other one. But I signed a deal with a production company that wants Legend Tripping as a TV show.
Oh, no
So
way.
we're actively shopping that right now. Yeah.
That's
So that
awesome.
could be really cool. I'll
Yeah.
go, and the idea is to take a tour bus and go all over the United States with my crew of investigators and finally put to rest some of the biggest urban legends. Everything from these small, every town has one, right?
Yep.
But these big ones, everything from Sleepy Hollow to, the most local, you know.
Yeah.
Somebody lived in that house, and if you were there at 2 o'clock on a Friday, you're gonna get spooked,
Right.
somebody's gonna a bride on the side of the road comes and
Right.
hitchhikes a ride, all that stuff. I'm
Right.
going to do it all.
Sure.
That's my ideas. But to the final thing, what is the story? Where did it come from?
Sure.
How did it happen? Honestly, like where did this come? And some of them I've found out are really a bunch of lore, and some of it is really a bunch of true crime. and sometimes it's in the middle, and it's fascinating stuff.
Yes. And I've checked out the last few videos, and so go check out both of your YouTube channels because they're great. And so we got the Poison tour next year, and I know I mean, I'm sure you guys are probably thinking about how many shows you're going to do. I know there's talk of you headlining. There's talk of you know, maybe being support for some bigger bands. Can you tell us where we're at in the planning stages for next year?
No, we're in talks. I mean, the
Sure.
idea is 40 shows, 40 years, you know.
Okay.
But our 10-year plan would to get to a 50th, you know what I
Sure.
mean? So the longer you go, the more shows you got to do.
Yeah. There was a point, and there was, and I know Brett has this party gras stuff, but there was a point in 2009, 10, you guys were touring every summer. And I don't know if that's what your goal is, but would you like to be
My
doing
goal.
would you like to be doing more? And I just and this is a personal note, but I think, you know, the reason that Brett can go out and do this is because of what you guys created in Poison. So I know many Poison fans wish that there was more Poison activity. That's just my personal opinion. So if
You're
you had
not
to
alone.
get it your way, what would you do?
Yeah, I go out every year.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I love the tour, and I want my kids to see it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I want you know, I can share it with my family now.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
The last thing, a friend of mine said that he bought something for you on Rocket Drum Works back in 2008. He said it wasn't available. He said you personally emailed him and to see what he would want to get instead. And he said, I couldn't believe that the Poison drummer did that. All I've heard about you is how great you are and how
Oh,
yeah, and this interview, you have just been fantastic. Thank you so much for the time. I am rooting for you guys and can't wait to see more Poison stuff and what you're doing with the Rockett Mafia. So Rikki Rockett, thank you so much for being on.
thank you. I really, really appreciate it, man.
Okay. All right. Take care of
All
yourself.
right. You have a good one.
All right.
Thank
You
you.
too. All right. Bye bye.
Bye.